You may be seated. Shabbat Shalom. Near the end of the Torah reading today, we're given instructions on the building of an altar. After setting up large stones on Mount Ebal, coating them with plaster, and inscribing the Torah onto them, we are instructed in Deuteronomy 27, 5 through 8, there too you shall build an altar to Adonai your God, an altar of stones. Do not wield an iron tool over them. You must build the altar of Adonai your God of unhewn stones. You shall offer on it burnt offerings to your God, and you shall sacrifice their offerings of well-being and eat them, rejoicing before Adonai your God. And on those stones you shall inscribe every word of this teaching most distinctly. The term that we just translated here as unhewn stones, avanim shlemut, literally mean whole stones. Shlemut having the same root as shalom, meaning whole, peaceful, complete. So the command to offer a well-being offering on this altar, which is an offering known as a shlamim, also shares that same root. So from the context, though, here, with the prohibition of wielding any iron tools over the stone, it makes sense to translate shlemut as unhewn. It makes sense. But looking to other contexts gives us other possibilities. This term, avanim shlemut, only appears one other time in the Tanakh, in Joshua 8:31, where the instruction that was given here is finally carried out. So too, there, unhewn stones make sense. The singular form of this phrase, even shlema, appears 3 times in Tanakh. In last week's Parsha, Deuteronomy 25:15, where the context is about using proper weights and measurements in commerce. Talked about that last year, if you remember. So there, the translation might be best understood as a just weight, or a full weight, or an honest weight. And that's also the context that we see for an even shlema in Proverbs 11:1, where we learn false scales are an abomination to Adonai, but an even shlema, an honest weight, pleases God. And finally, we also find this phrase in 1 Kings 6:7, where we learn that the stones used to build the temple were even shlema. And here, again, it could mean an unhewn stone, but it also, probably more likely, means a completed stone, because it says the stones were fully dressed in the quarries and not at the building site. So this term, even shlema or avanim shlemut, have all of these possible translations. And while, as I said, the context here points to the unhewn stone being the proper translation in this context, I think when we hear this instruction to make the first altar to God after finally entering into the promised land, it is intentional that we think of all of these possibilities. It's the intention that we think about all of them: unhewn, whole, complete, just, peaceful. And when we look at this whole constellation of meanings in the word shlemut, I think that helps us understand why we have this prohibition from using iron tools on the stones. As it says in Mishnah Midot 3:4, since iron was created to shorten human beings' days, and the altar was created to prolong their days, it is not right, therefore, that that which shortens should be lifted against that which prolongs. The Mishnah also teaches that an iron tool simply touching the stone, an iron tool touching the stone is enough to render that stone invalid to be used in this altar. The construction of an altar to God must be a process that is completely peaceful. Anything connected in any way to iron, the symbol of weaponry and violence, is simply not fit. Just a touch. But how do we know if a stone has been touched by iron tools? Maimonides in the Mishnah Torah, writing about the altar in the temple, which had the same rules as this altar, says that they would get the stones from virgin earth. They would dig until they reached a point which was obviously never used for tilling or for building, and they would take the stones from there. Alternatively, they would take these stones from the Mediterranean Sea and build with them. So the avanim shlemut are not easily found. They require digging down into the earth or diving into the sea. The tools of iron and the violence they represent have a wide reach, but it is possible to go down deeper, to find the unhewn stone. They may be a bit rough, but there's no need to break them apart. They are fine as they are, unhewn, complete, whole, at peace. These stones serve as the raw material you can then build into an altar, the foundation for our relationship with God. So we have this altar, unhewn stones, untouched by iron. Now what? So going back to the Torah portion, we notice 3 things are to happen in this altar, on this altar. 1, the halita alav ola l'Adonai Elohecha. You shall offer on it burnt offerings to Adonai your God. 2, v'zavachta shlamim v'achalta sham v'samachta lifnei Adonai Elohecha. And you shall sacrifice offerings of well-being. You get that same root, the shlamim. Offerings of well-being, and eat them there, rejoicing before Adonai your God. And 3, v'chatavta al ha'evanim et kol divrei haTorah hazot ba'er hetiv. And you shall inscribe on those stones every word of this teaching most distinctly. So on the altar, we have these 2 distinct types of sacrifices. We have the burnt offering, which is an offering which is completely consumed and given to God in the fire. And we have the well-being or peace offering, where most of the sacrifice is eaten by the person making the sacrifice, along with their friends and family and the rest of the community. 2 distinct modes. 1, everything offered to God. The other, where we not only derive benefit by eating it, but we're supposed to rejoice and celebrate. Both are worship. Both. And then beyond the sacrifices, the altar becomes a place of learning, where the Torah is to be inscribed ba'er hetiv, very distinctly. Ibn Ezra teaches that this means that the writing needs to be very clear. Probably the original contextual meaning of this phrase. Rashi, however, basing his teaching on that found in the Talmud, sees ba'er hetiv as meaning well explained. So the Torah should be well explained, and that means that on this altar, the Torah wasn't just written in Hebrew, but in all 70 languages of the earth. It's going to be really small writing or a really big altar. But either way, however we want to translate this term, the Torah needs to be accessible, whether it's simply clear to read or it is translated so all can understand it in their own language. So it may be difficult to find the avanim shlemut, these unhewn, complete, peaceful stones untouched by iron. As I said, we have to dig deep in the ground. We have to venture out into the sea. But once we've uncovered them, once we have set them up as an altar, they become a place of connection, a place where human and divine meet. And it becomes a place where we make Torah as accessible as possible. Now, we don't build altars anymore, whether out of unhewn stones or anything else. But there are lessons here for us as we create sacred space and sacred community. As we come together as living stones to build a home for God in this world, can we find that core place, the place of shlemut deep within us that is whole and complete as it is, a place within us safe, untouched by violence, a place within us where it is okay to be our whole selves, unhewn, maybe rough around the edges, but at peace with that, at peace with ourselves and at peace with each other? Can we find that part of us, and from that place of shlemut, can we make our offerings to God, the offerings that are completely consumed in the giving, and the offerings that we enjoy the fruits of, rejoicing in community? Can we find that part of us, and from that place of shlemut, can we make our Torah clear to all? Because that is the sacred work of building the altar. It's a sacred work our people did when they first entered the land, and it is the sacred work we have to do now. So I pray that we find our places of shlemut and build our altars from that. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Thank you so much, Rabbi Roller, for a beautiful Dvar Torah. I think that you've ironed out the difficulties in the Parsha, and I think altered our perception about how to look at this very important mitzvah.
I'm about to do a meditation, and before that I was going to mention, you might have noticed the famous Rabbi Roller puns were gone, and it was because I didn't want you to take them for granted. Okay. But before we go into Musaf, which we will do in just a minute, I want us to transform the teaching into a meditation. So if you're comfortable, the feet on the floor, if you feel comfortable to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. And I want you to search in your mind's eye for that Even Shlema, that unhewn stone. And maybe you're at the shore of the sea and the stone is there. Maybe you're in a field. And if you dig down just a little ways, you'll find it. And as you search, as you dig, or as you dive into the ocean, you find this stone, this unhewn stone, and it is perfect. It is peaceful, unhewn, just as it is. And you take the stone, and the stone is your heart. The stone is your heart, because your heart is also pure and at peace and shlema. And as you have this stone, as you have your heart, I want you to think to yourself, what can I give of myself? What can I make up as an offering that I will give? And it will be gone. I will give and it will be gone, and that's okay. This is my burnt offering. It will be completely consumed in the giving. And what do I have to give that I can also enjoy with myself and my friends and my family? What can I give that will bring me that joy and I can enjoy it here? And as you look at the stone, as you look deep into your heart, see very clearly, very distinctly, words of light, words of Torah. And what are those words? What are those words upon your heart that you feel you want to put there, shining out for all to see? When you're ready, you can open your eyes. We will continue the service with Musaf.